Real kings don't make noise. They disappear, and the silence drives everyone crazy. You want to know what really makes someone spiral? It's not the yelling. It's not the begging. It's when you go quiet, completely. That's when it hits them. That's when they start pacing the room, refreshing your page, checking their phone, and wondering how they lost something they thought they could control. My friends, this isn't about drama. This is about presence, the kind that haunts, the kind that lingers, the kind that makes them feel like they didn't just lose a person, they lost a king. If you've ever been taken for granted, if they walked away like you were forgettable, this one's for you. Stay with me. Hey folks, imagine this. You're a lighthouse. You used to shine just for them, constant, dependable, always there in the storm. And what did they do? They got used to your light, thought they could drift in and out of your glow whenever they felt like it. But now, you've turned the light off, not out of hate, but out of power. And suddenly, they can't navigate, they can't sleep, they can't figure out why everything feels darker. That's what happens when a king stops shining for someone who stopped appreciating his fire. Let's break a lie right now. They didn't walk away because you weren't good enough. They walked away because they thought you'd stay stuck, orbiting them, reacting, checking in, hoping. That's the story they told themselves. He won't move on. He'll always be there. But when you go silent, not fake silent, but real, grounded, stoic silence, it flips the whole script. They're not in control anymore. You are. Because silence, my friends, is not weakness. It's power that doesn't need to shout. People forget. Thunder is loud, but it's the earthquake that changes everything. And you? You are the earthquake, not the noise, the shift, the power they didn't see coming. They expected a meltdown. You gave them mystery. They expected chaos. You gave them calm. They expected the boy they left. But now they're haunted by the man you became in the silence they created. Some of you might be thinking, but shouldn't I explain myself? Shouldn't I tell them how much they hurt me? No. That's what they expect. That's how they keep the power. Every time you send that one last text, every time you break your silence just to check in, you give away the throne. But when you go silent and stay silent, they start seeing what they lost. Not a text, not a voice, but a presence they once took for granted. A mirror that made them feel important. And now that mirror's gone. And all they see is the emptiness they left behind. This quiet power, it makes them question everything. It makes them feel the kind of loss that no apology could ever fix. Because now it's not about words, it's about energy. They feel the shift. And trust me, folks, no one forgets the moment they lost a king. Not because he collapsed, but because he evolved without saying a single word. So if you're ready to stop explaining, if you're ready to stop chasing and start rising, this is your path. You don't need their closure. You don't need their validation. What you need is discipline, detachment, inner command, and the quiet strength that makes the world wonder how you became so untouchable. Comment below, "My silence carries a crown." Press that like button, hit subscribe, and stay with me, because the real ones, they don't shout, they rise, silently, powerfully, unforgettable. Number 1. The crown wasn't loud, it was earned in silence. A real king doesn't roar, he just stops showing up, and the whole kingdom starts to shake. Let that hit. Because sometimes it's not the sound of the door slamming that makes them panic. It's the silence that follows. It's the quiet realization that the man they thought would always be there isn't anymore. No announcement, no drama, just absence. And that's what they feel most. Not your voice, but your vanishing. Picture this. You're at a grand feast. Music's playing. People are laughing. Lights are bright. But suddenly, without a word, the host, the one who built the castle, gets up and walks out. No speech, no goodbye. He just leaves. And the moment he does, the room starts to lose its magic. The food doesn't taste the same. The laughter fades. People start whispering, "Where did he go?" That's you. You're not the noise. You're the one who gave everything its meaning. And when you remove yourself quietly, they finally realize how loud your presence really was. You see, they didn't expect that. They were counting on your reaction, counting on your weakness. They wanted to provoke the old version of you, the one who chased, who explained, who folded. But this version, he's not here to perform. He's here to protect the crown they never saw until it was gone. Now you might be asking yourself, but won't they forget me if I stay silent? That's fear talking. That's the old story trying to keep you small. Here's the truth. They forget noise, they forget apologies, they forget words, but they never forget stillness. Why? Because silence forces people to listen to the part of themselves they've been ignoring. Let me break another lie. They didn't love you more when you gave more. They loved the control, the predictability, the way you showed up, even when they didn't deserve it. And deep down, they thought they'd never lose that. That's why you're silenced now. It's not just confusing, it's terrifying, because for the first time, they don't know what page you're on, or if they're even still in your story. And let's be honest, this won't be easy. Staying silent when your heart's on fire, that takes real power, because silence isn't passive, it's disciplined. It's you standing at the gates of your peace, refusing to let chaos back in. It's you choosing dignity over desperation. And I know, it hurts. You want to speak. You want to scream, "Don't you see what you've lost?" But kings don't scream. Kings just rise. And when they do, the world eventually looks up. You'll battle doubt. You'll battle the voice that says, "Maybe I should text." You'll battle the urge to prove something. But let me remind you, you prove nothing by returning to the place that broke you. You prove everything by outgrowing it, in silence, in strategy, in power. Think of the oak tree in a storm. It doesn't shout, it doesn't run. It stands still, roots deep in the earth, unmoved. And when the wind dies down, it's still there, stronger. That's who you are now. Not a boy chasing attention, but a man standing in truth. And truth? It doesn't need permission to exist, it just is. They'll feel your absence. Not today, maybe, but one night, when the room feels too quiet, when no one answers the way you did, when the attention they traded you for starts to fade, that's when they'll feel it. The echo of the presence they discarded, the weight of the king they never truly understood. And by then, you'll be long gone. Not bitter, just better. So here's the mission now. Protect your crown. Don't toss it in the dirt just to be seen. Don't hand it over just to feel needed. You earned this power through pain, through silence, through every moment you could have broken, but chose to build. This crown isn't made of gold. It's made of every scar you turned into strength. And if you're still doubting whether silence is power, remember this. The most feared warriors in history weren't the ones who screamed. They were the ones who moved in silence and struck with precision. So let them feel the absence. Let them wonder what happened. You don't owe them a single word. Because the truth is, if they didn't appreciate your light when you were shining for them, they don't deserve to see how bright you've become now. Comment below. I protect my crown. Number 2, they didn't lose a man. They lost their mirror. Some people don't miss you. They miss the version of themselves they could see in your eyes. Let that settle in for a second, because it's deeper than it sounds. When they walked away, they didn't just leave behind a man, they left behind their mirror, the one that made them feel beautiful even on the days they weren't. The one that reflected their importance, their worth, their power. And the moment you pulled back, the moment your eyes no longer confirmed their significance, something inside them started to shatter. But they'll never admit it. because this kind of realization doesn't scream. It creeps in, quiet, cold, and undeniable. You see, when someone becomes your emotional mirror, they start depending on your reactions to feel something. Your smile made them feel validated. Your attention made them feel seen. Your affection made them feel chosen. And here's the catch: they didn't always earn it. In fact, the more you gave it freely, the more they relied on it. Not to grow, not to love you back, but to feed their own image. And now that you're gone, now that you've gone silent and stopped reflecting anything back, they're standing in front of a mirror that shows them nothing, just darkness, just silence, just space. It hits harder than they expected because they thought they were the main character. They thought they could walk away, come back, repeat the cycle. Why? Because you always gave. You always responded. You always reminded them that they were worth something, even when they weren't showing up for you. But now, that mirror is blank. And it's not because you stopped loving, it's because you started seeing clearly. You realized that your presence was being used as a tool, and a king doesn't offer his reflection to someone who only comes to admire themselves. Now they're spinning, wondering why they feel hollow, why their confidence feels shaky, why they're posting more, dressing up more, saying things that seem out of character. It's not confidence, it's an attempt to see if your mirror is still turned toward them. They want to know if you're still watching, still reacting, still orbiting, because your attention, even in silence, gave them structure. Now they're floating, weightless in a world that doesn't bend to them the way yours did. Here's where most men slip up. You'll see a breadcrumb, a message, a "how have you been?" a "hope you're good," and you'll think, maybe they care, maybe they finally understand. But no, my friends, they're not reaching for your heart. They're reaching for their reflection. They're reaching to see if the mirror still works. Don't fall for it. You're not a mirror anymore. You're a mountain, still, silent, unmoved. And let's talk about that guilt you might be feeling, the urge to be the bigger person, the desire to give them a response, even a small one, just to keep the peace. That's not peace, that's fear wearing a mask, fear of being forgotten, fear of being misunderstood. But here's the truth: you're not responsible for someone else's ability to face themselves. If they relied on your presence to feel whole, then your absence is exactly what they need. Not to punish them, but to wake them up. This is the phase where the power shifts, quietly, invisibly, but completely, because now, for the first time, they're seeing who they really are without your love holding them up. And for many people, that reflection is not easy to look at, especially when they've spent their life measuring their worth by how much someone else was willing to give. And you gave endlessly, until you didn't. And that's when the real silence began. Let me put it like this. Imagine you've been standing in front of a mirror for years. It tells you you're beautiful, strong, irresistible, but then one day it just turns off. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, just out of self-respect. That's what's happening now, and they'll either learn to find their own reflection or they'll keep looking for someone else to validate what they never built themselves. But that's no longer your role. You've retired from being someone's emotional supplier. Because kings aren't mirrors, they're thrones. They don't reflect, they reign. And you can't reign while you're constantly adjusting your crown just to make someone else feel tall. That's not strength, that's sacrifice. And the time for that is over. You've shifted from validation to vision, and your vision doesn't include being someone else's emotional crutch anymore. So if they miss you, good. If they're hurting, let them. If they're wondering what happened to the man who used to hold them up, tell them to check the mirror. It's empty now, and it's supposed to be. That emptiness, that silence, that ache. It's the echo of your power. Not because you left with a bang, but because you left with your dignity. Comment below, "I'm no longer your mirror." Say it, show it. Let the world feel the shift. Number 3, Power is when you walk away without warning. When a king leaves quietly, the silence does all the talking, and no one forgets what it said. There's a moment they never see coming, a moment that doesn't come with screaming, closure, or one last emotional scene. It comes in stillness, in quiet footsteps, in the calm of a man who finally understands his worth. That's when you stop explaining, stop waiting, stop trying to prove your heart is worth staying for, and you just walk, no warning, no chase, just complete emotional detachment. And that's when the panic sets in, not because of what you did, but because of everything you didn't say. They thought the power was in your presence, but it was always in your ability to withdraw it. They thought they could stretch your love, test your limits, walk away and come back whenever. Because you always left the door open, you always gave them access, and in their mind, your loyalty wasn't strength, it was submission, something they could bet on, until you went silent, until you disappeared, until the door they used to swing open so carelessly now doesn't even exist. Let's make one thing clear. This isn't ghosting. This isn't manipulation. This is sovereignty. This is the decision to stop feeding a connection that only drained you. This is the moment you realized you were bending to keep someone who wouldn't even shift an inch for you. And that realization, it doesn't scream. It doesn't need to. It settles in your bones. And it makes walking away the easiest hard thing you've ever done. They expected chaos. They expected you to lose it, to lash out, to beg, to spiral, but instead you vanished. And the thing about a man who vanishes without theatrics is this: he's not running, he's rising, not in anger, but in awareness, not in revenge, but in clarity. And that calm exit, that's what haunts them, not because they lost someone who needed them, but because they lost someone who finally stopped needing them back. You know what happens after that? The rewrites begin, the mental spiral. They start replaying the moments. The cold shoulder you gave without explanation, the unanswered message, the way you walked right past them, different, unreachable. That silence becomes the loudest part of their day. Because now they have to sit with the version of you they never believed could exist. The version who doesn't break, who doesn't fold, who doesn't come back. And you'll have doubts. Trust me, your mind will say things like, maybe I should have said something, maybe I owe them an explanation. But no, you don't owe anything to someone who treated your heart like a background character in their story. They weren't confused when they neglected you. They weren't conflicted when they played games. But now that you're quiet, now they're lost, that's not your burden to carry. That's the consequence of underestimating someone who gave them everything. Walking away without warning is not cruelty. It's clarity in motion. It's the moment a man realizes that explaining himself is just another form of begging, that waiting for closure is just another leash they use to keep you orbiting. You don't need permission to leave a story that was slowly killing your spirit. You don't need to narrate your exit. You just need to go. And when you do it with dignity, not noise, that's when they realize you were the king all along. They just never saw it because you were too busy proving it. Think of it like this. A storm doesn't announce itself on social media. It doesn't text before it hits. It just arrives, shifts the atmosphere, and when it's gone, nothing is the same. That's what you become when you walk away without warning. A force they can't predict, a presence they can't replace. You were the warmth in the room, the gravity in the space. And now there's just cold, just confusion, just the echo of the door you never slammed. They'll try to figure out where you went, why you changed, why you're not responding. And that's the beauty of it. You're not hiding, you're healing, in silence, in solitude, in the strength of a man who doesn't perform pain for validation. You're rebuilding your inner kingdom, and when you return, if you return, you'll be unrecognizable. Not because you became someone else, but because you finally became someone who refuses to be misunderstood, mistreated, or minimized again. So no, don't send that message. Don't explain the silence. Don't narrate the growth. Walk quietly. Let your absence speak the words your soul was tired of repeating. Let them feel what they never thought they would, the weight of your disappearance. Not because you wanted to hurt them, but because you finally chose to protect yourself. And here's what you say to yourself every time that old version of you tries to resurface, every time the pain tries to drag you back into the past. I walk without warning. That's your code now. Say it, mean it, be it. Comment below, I walk without warning. Show them, show yourself. Show to the world around you that your worth no longer negotiates, that your peace doesn't beg to be seen. Because next, we go deeper into the silence that shakes their entire world. Number 4. Feel the absence more than the argument. They don't remember what you said in the fight. They remember how quiet you got after. It's strange, isn't it? How silence cuts deeper than shouting, how the absence of your voice echoes longer than anything you ever said. They think the breakup happens in the argument, in the final words, in the last text, but it doesn't. The real separation happens in the silence that follows, in the way you stopped checking in the way you stopped explaining, in the way your energy just vanished from the places they used to find it. That's when it starts to sink in, not during the conflict, but in the quiet after. Because arguments are expected, noise is expected, tears, rage, long texts, emotional pleas. They know that script by heart. That's how most people play the game. But when you don't play, when you don't respond, when you don't show up to the chaos they were hoping would keep you emotionally entangled, that's when the real fear creeps in. Not because they lost the conversation, but because they lost access. And once you stop reacting, once you stop trying to be understood, they start to realize that you were the only one who ever really brought meaning to the connection in the first place. They feel it when their phone doesn't light up with your name. They feel it when their stories don't show your view. They feel it when they post something they know used to trigger a response. And they get nothing. That nothing, that's the weight they never prepared for, because they thought your presence was a given. They thought your love was endless. But now they're left sitting in a room where the energy feels colder, emptier, and they don't know how to warm it up again. And they won't show it right away. Oh no, at first they'll pretend they don't notice. They'll stay busy. They'll act fine. They'll post with purpose, as if they're unbothered. But behind all of that is the hollow ache of absence. Because presence, my friends, isn't about being in the same room. It's about being felt. And you were felt. Even when you said nothing, even when you just listened, even when you stood quietly in the background, holding the weight of the connection together without recognition. And now that you're gone, that absence is louder than any argument you ever had. You know what really messes with someone's mind? Not anger, not insults, but stillness. Emotional stillness, the kind that says, I'm not hurt anymore, I'm just done. That kind of energy hits differently. Because it's not about winning, it's not about revenge, it's about realizing that your peace is more valuable than being right. And that peace, that's what they never expected you to protect. They expected fire. They got fog. They expected thunder. They got silence. And in that silence, they're forced to face something far more painful than your words. They're forced to face themselves. Without your reactions, they can't deflect. Without your explanations, they can't manipulate. Without your effort, they can't pretend they were doing enough. Your absence stripped away the performance. And now they're standing in front of a truth they can't escape. They had something real, and they let it go. And what's worse, they thought it would wait for them. But not this time, because this time you didn't collapse. You didn't crumble, you didn't plead, you vanished, not in bitterness, but in self-respect. You walked away, not because you didn't care, but because you finally cared about yourself more. That's what absence really is. It's a boundary, a silent one that can't be broken with words or apologies or breadcrumb efforts. And the longer it lasts, the more they feel the difference between what they had and what they lost. They start comparing. The attention from others feels shallow. The conversations feel dry. The energy, office. Because none of it has the weight, the depth, the sincerity that you brought. You weren't just a partner, you were a presence, a grounding force. And now that you're gone, the space you left behind has become a shadow they can't step out of. And maybe you still feel the pain. Maybe you still replay moments in your mind. That's okay. You're human, but every time you want to break the silence, every time you want to send a message just to ease the tension, remember this: the absence is working, not to hurt them, but to heal you, to restore your energy, to clear your mind, to remind you that you are the peace, not the problem. And anyone who makes you feel otherwise doesn't deserve access to your world. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to explain the silence. Let it speak. Let it teach. Let it echo in the spaces they thought would always belong to them, because in the end, they won't remember every word you said. They'll remember the feeling of the day you stopped saying anything at all. Comment below. They feel my absence. Let it be your reminder, your power, your quiet declaration that you no longer fight to be seen. You disappear, and that's what makes them look. And next, we'll go even deeper into what happens when your indifference becomes the very thing they can't stop thinking about. Number 5. Unbothered is the new unforgettable. It wasn't your love they remembered. It was how calm you stayed after they thought they broke you. Let's be honest. Most people expect you to fall apart. That's the version they had in mind. The one who gets angry. The one who explodes. The one who keeps calling, texting, asking for closure, begging for understanding. That's the version they were prepared for. That's the version they thought would crawl back just to be seen. But then you gave them something different. You gave them nothing. No reply, no emotion, no breakdown, just complete, unshaken stillness. And that, my friend, is what changed the story. You know what they never expected? That you would wake up the next day and move like nothing happened. That you would keep going, unbothered, focused, grounded. Not because it didn't hurt, but because you refused to let that pain control the direction of your life. That's the shift. That's what turns a man from memorable to unforgettable. Because when someone hurts you and you respond with grace, discipline, and silence, that haunts them longer than any outburst ever could. We live in a world where chaos is common, where emotional outbursts are the norm, where attention is currency and reactions are traded like gold. But when you show restraint, when you don't bite the bait, when you just step back without letting your emotions spill all over the floor, you become rare. And rarity is what sticks, because they can replace your number, they can mute your name, they can pretend you never mattered, but they can't ignore that feeling they get when they realize you never gave them the show they were hoping for. That show? That's what validates most people. If you scream, it means you cared. If you argue, it means you're still emotionally invested. If you collapse, it means they still have power. But when you don't do any of that, when you just carry yourself like a man who's been through worse and won't flinch again, that's when the tables turn. They stop feeling in control. They stop feeling confident. They stop feeling certain, because now you're the one they can't read. And mystery is magnetic. There's power in being unreadable, power in letting people wonder instead of always explaining yourself. Because silence doesn't mean weakness, it means command. And the man who can feel everything but show nothing, He owns the room. He owns the narrative, not through manipulation, but through maturity, through mastery, through the kind of self-control that doesn't need a spotlight to prove its strength. And yes, it will confuse them, it will frustrate them. They'll try to provoke you, test you, tempt you back into their chaos. A meme, a late-night message, a story they know you'll see. But when you don't take the bait, when you leave them on read or don't even open it, that's when they feel it. The shift, the consequence, the quiet realization that they lost someone who once made them feel like the center of the universe, and now won't even flinch. Being unbothered isn't about acting. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about rising so far above the noise that even if you do care, it doesn't change how you move. Because the man who can keep his rhythm while his heart heals, that man becomes a force of nature. He becomes someone they replay in their mind, not because of what he said, but because of how he carried himself when everything was falling apart. Let me ask you this. What kind of man do you want to be remembered as? The one who begged for clarity, or the one who created it through his actions? The one who unraveled, or the one who rebuilt in silence? Because life will test you, people will test you, and not everyone who enters your world deserves to shake it. Sometimes the best response to betrayal isn't a confrontation, it's composure. And make no mistake, they feel it. Every day you don't reach out, every time you pass them in public with peace in your eyes, every story they post that doesn't move you, every milestone you hit without their support, they feel it. Because now your absence isn't cold, it's powerful. It's the quiet reminder that you never needed closure. You needed clarity. And clarity doesn't always come from conversation. Sometimes it comes from walking away and refusing to look back. So the next time someone asks you why you're so calm, so unbothered, so still, tell them this: because peace is the new power. Tell them you've cried enough, chased enough, explained enough. Now it's time to elevate. Not through noise, but through discipline. Not through war, but through presence. You're not just healing anymore. You're becoming the kind of man they can't reach, can't shake, can't replace. Comment below, unbothered and unforgettable. Let the world know, not with shouting, not with revenge, but with the kind of energy that walks into a room, says nothing, and is still remembered long after it leaves. Stay with me. We're just getting started. Number 6. They thought you'd spiral, but you built an empire instead. They expected a storm, you gave them structure, and that's what shook them. There's something deeply unsettling about watching someone you thought would fall rise instead, quietly, relentlessly, without a single scream, without a single text, without so much as a sideways glance. They expected chaos. They expected your pain to turn you into a mess they could pity. That's what they braced for. That's the story they were counting on. But what they got instead was a man who vanished from their emotional web and reappeared in full control of his world. Not broken, built. You see, most people can't handle the idea of you being better off without them. It's not just about you healing. It's about you evolving so far beyond what they once knew that they can't recognize you anymore. And when you don't spiral, when you don't start posting sad quotes and obsessing over what went wrong, when you don't let heartbreak become your identity, you break the narrative. You destroy the image they created in their mind of you staying stuck, waiting, hoping. They thought you'd turn to dust. Instead, you turned into discipline. And that's terrifying for anyone who thought they were your anchor. Because here's the truth, they didn't think you were weak. No, they just hoped you'd be too soft to move on, too kind to disappear, too emotionally loyal to stop checking in. They were counting on your compassion, not your command. And when you start using your mornings to train your body instead of checking your phone, when your nights are filled with goals instead of regrets, when your time becomes your own again, not shared with memories that no longer serve you. That's when they start to feel it. They feel it when they see you glowing, not the fake glow, not the one that's all filters and forced smiles. The real one, the one that comes from hitting the gym harder, waking up earlier, learning things you never had the time or focus for because your energy used to be tied up in emotional chaos. That version of you, the one that wakes up and doesn't scroll through their page, the one that's not pretending to be okay because you are okay, that's the one they weren't ready for. And don't think they're not watching. They always watch, even when they say they're not, even when they act like they've moved on. Trust me, the one who discarded you always circles back to see what became of the version they walked away from. But now, you're not that version anymore. You're sharper, more grounded, less reactive, and that growth, that glow, that upgrade, it's not a performance, it's a transformation. They don't recognize you now because they never took the time to really know you before. They were too busy trying to mold you into something they could control. But the man you've become, he's not controlled, he's commanding. You don't chase anymore. You attract. You don't explain yourself anymore. You let your actions speak, and you don't break under pressure anymore. You use it as fuel. Think of your life as a battlefield. They thought removing themselves would be the final blow, but instead it cleared the field, and now you've used that space to build a kingdom. Brick by brick, hour by hour, pain into power, loss into leadership. You didn't just survive, you reinvented. And that's what haunts them. Not the memories, not the history, but the reality that the person they once had full access to has become someone who doesn't even flinch at the mention of their name. You stopped being reactive, you became rare, and rare men don't chase, they build. They build things that can't be taken. They build habits that create freedom. They build mindsets that can't be manipulated. They build silence so strong it echoes. You want to know what really makes someone regret leaving you. It's not your tears. It's not your pleas. It's seeing you become everything you once spoke about becoming, but without them in the picture. When they see the body you're building, the business you're launching, the boundaries you now enforce, that's when the doubt creeps in. Did I give up too soon? Did I underestimate him? Was he really the one holding me together the whole time? And no, you don't answer those questions. Your life does. Your new peace does. Your discipline does. You show them that they didn't leave behind someone weak. They left behind a man who was just about to rise. And now that you're here, you don't need their validation. You don't even need their recognition, because kings don't rise for attention. They rise for legacy. So keep building, keep showing up, keep sharpening your mind, your focus, your mission. Every hour you invest in yourself is another reminder to them that your love was never the weakness, it was the gift. And they threw it away. You don't need to look back. You've outgrown that story. You're no longer who you were, and they'll never be able to reach the man you're becoming. Comment below. I built instead of broke. Let that be the reminder, not just to them, but to you. Because the most powerful comeback doesn't need an audience, it just needs discipline. And next, we'll go even deeper into how your silence became the very lesson they can't stop learning from. Number 7. You became the lesson they'll never admit they needed. Some people don't come back for closure. They come back to see if the mirror still reflects their ego. Don't be that mirror. There's a moment that happens quietly. No drama, no confrontation, no grand gesture, just a whisper in the back of their mind they can't silence. Why did he stop caring? And the more they try to escape that thought, the louder it becomes, because something shifted, and it wasn't them, it was you. You stopped reacting, you stopped showing up, you stopped giving your light to someone who only stood in it when it was convenient. That silence, it taught them more than your words ever could. You didn't become bitter, you became the lesson. And let's be real, lessons never come easy. especially when they expose something uncomfortable. See, they thought you'd always be available. They thought they could disrespect you, disappear, come back, and you'd be right there. But instead of running after them, you did something far more powerful. You disappeared inward. You stopped looking for their attention and started giving all of it to yourself. And that, my friend, is where the real transformation began. Because while they were trying to replace you, you were upgrading yourself. Not for them, for you, quietly, relentlessly, without seeking applause. That's what throws them off. You didn't become the man they expected. You became the one they never imagined, the one who doesn't explain anymore, the one who doesn't flinch when they show up in your DMs, the one who isn't angry but isn't available either. And the more they reach, the more your silence reminds them, access denied, not because you're cold, but because you've grown. You've elevated, you've healed in a way they can't touch, and now every breadcrumb they throw at you just shows them how much they lost. They'll try, though. A text, a random meme, an old inside joke. Little things that don't say much, but speak volumes. They want to know if the door is still cracked open. They want to see if you're still the same man they left. But the truth is, that man died the moment you realized you were fighting for someone who was never fighting for you. And in his place, a king was born, a king who doesn't chase, a king who doesn't explain his absence, a king who lets his silence educate. And here's the thing, they'll never say it out loud. They'll never tell you you changed their life. They'll never admit you made them reflect. Because to do that, they'd have to admit they mishandled you, that they overlooked a man who was loyal, devoted, present. And ego doesn't like to admit failure, so instead they'll sit with that tension, smile through it, pretend they're fine. But every time they see you move forward without them, every time they hear your name, every time someone speaks about how much you've evolved, that sting returns. Not because they hate you, but because deep down they know you were the test they failed. And maybe you're wondering, what if they never realize it? What if they never feel the loss? Let me tell you something. Your silence is louder than you think. You don't need to hear their apology to know they regret it. You don't need them to speak to know they're watching. Regret doesn't always come in words. Sometimes it comes in silence, in hesitation, in the way their confidence shakes when they see you. You became the reminder they carry quietly, the standard they now measure others against, the ghost that doesn't haunt them, but humbles them. Because when someone loses a man who no longer reacts, no longer pleads, no longer needs, they lose their sense of control. And in that space, the truth shows up. The truth that they weren't ready for your kind of love, that they weren't strong enough to match your depth, that they had a king in front of them and treated him like a pawn. And now you sit on a throne they can no longer reach, not out of spite, but out of standards. Because healing isn't about winning them back. It's about never lowering yourself again to be understood by someone who refused to see you clearly. So let them talk, let them post, let them pretend they've moved on. None of it changes the fact that your silence is working, that your absence has become the one thing they can't silence in their own mind. You were the chapter they skipped, only to realize it held the answers they needed all along. Comment below, I became the lesson. Say it, own it. Let it be your reminder that you didn't lose them. They lost the version of you that was willing to bleed just to feel seen. And that version, he's not coming back. Because the man you are now doesn't need closure, doesn't need revenge, doesn't need validation. He just needs peace. And that's exactly what you're walking in now. This is the final chapter of that story and the first page of your legacy. From here on out, you move different, not because you're broken, but because you've rebuilt, quietly, powerfully, unapologetically. And the best part, they'll never forget the silence that taught them everything they were too proud to learn when your love was still speaking.